Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to bring you our special COVID-19 show today. My name is Hapnanya Michiampedi. This afternoon, we are looking at the protocols that have been outlined by the Tourism Ministry as part of the phase 1 of the easing of the restrictions, what the various players in that sector are supposed to do, some figures and also some issues around the world relating to the global pandemic. Do stay with us. We have more for you. Right, so with me this afternoon, I have Ebenezer Afenyidazi, the head of the Citi Business News Desk here at Citi FM and Citi TV, and also Godfred Akoto-Boafo. He heads the Current Affairs Desk at Citi FM and Citi TV. Gentlemen, you're welcome.
Thank you, Abena.
Well, today we heard from the Tourism Ministry. It looks like they are taking their time. Each day we'll have a ministry. The Religious and Chieftaincy Affairs Minister addressed Ghanaians on Monday night, and then we had the Education Minister also coming in, and the Sports Minister also addressed the media yesterday, and today it was the turn of the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Creative Arts. She's in the person of Barbara Otinjesi, and she spoke about a number of things. Here's a clip from that press conference.
All tourist sites and attractions may apply to the Ghana Tourism Authority to be allowed to open after they have put in place all the precautionary measures. The Tourism Authority will inspect such measures before granting approval. These measures include enough provision of Veronica buckets and tissues and hand sanitizers positioned at vantage points at the entrances in a manner to prevent queuing and crowding of people at such entrances. The people in a queue must also stand at least a meter apart in observance of social distancing. Strict adherence to the washing of hands before entering the sites, and mandatory wearing of face masks during the entire period that you are at the tourist sites. Also, provision of designated isolation areas in these facilities will be available in case that there is any issue coming up and somebody needs to be isolated. A maximum of 100 persons at a time will be allowed to visit such tourist sites approved to operate. With respect to our nightclubs and drinking bars, they will continue to remain closed because we all recognize the mode of socialization in nightclubs and drinking bars. Usually, these nightclubs and drinking bars are small areas, and we gather to drink over long periods and chat and enjoy ourselves. We cannot do this during this period. So our nightclubs and drinking bars, including the nightclubs and drinking bars in hotels, will remain closed.
So that was Barbara Otinjesi, the Tourism Minister, talking about some measures they've put in place. They are going to ensure that players in that sector abide by all the safety protocols of COVID-19. And if you're a tourist site and you want to operate, the Minister says you need to apply to the Tourism Authority for permission and approval before you do that. Eben, let's go through some of the things the Minister mentioned and the guidelines that the Ministry has outlined.
I think the breakdown is quite comprehensive. Like we always say, they look good on paper. Implementation always becomes the challenge because obviously you won't get police or security personnel being there 24/7 or whatever to check. We are actually relying on the conscience of people, most especially at this time, that people will just be responsible and know that the times we are in are dangerous. So whatever you fail to do or not do doesn't only put yourself at risk, but others at risk. So we'll try and we'll believe that they will do what is right. But we also want to believe that the agency, which is the Ghana, they do have some task forces that go around to do some checks. So randomly they will have to be doing some checks, because if we want to leave it to people alone, to the organizations alone to do what they have to do, we may not get the results we want, because sometimes the economic factors override some of these social considerations or even health considerations. Because don't forget that a lot of these organizations have lost so much. In fact, the woman gave a figure. I think, I'm not too sure, we have to check, but the sector so far between January and now, between March and now, has lost almost $1.6 million thereabouts. We have to check the figure again, but the losses have been huge for the tourism industry. My only challenge is with the tourism sites, because at this time, I don't know who is going to a tourism site to visit actually. So for them, I don't really think they are going to function, because also don't forget that you don't gain so much from domestic tourism itself. Now your borders are closed. The tourist sites are mostly patronized also by foreigners as well. And if your borders are closed and people are not moving to come into the country, the tourist sites, they may as well remain closed until the restrictions are lifted fully. But for the hotels, the restaurants, I'm excited that they've been given some level of easing so that business comes back to normal. Because for as long as these businesses also stay, it means that government will also have the burden of having to do so much for them to rebound, to bounce back. The minister actually announced that there's going to be a package of $9.6 million or $9 million thereabout, to support a facility to support the sector, the tourism sector itself, because we know that losses for hotels and restaurants and all others have been quite huge. Yesterday, for instance, I was at the Accra Mall briefly, and in fact, before I entered one of the gates, I had my mask on. If you don't have a mask, you actually turn away. And then there's also the sanitizer for people to just sanitize their hands before they enter. I actually saw people being turned away because they didn't have the mask on. I thought that's a good effort. When I went into the restaurant, I was going to pick something. Also, that place, they had the thermometer gun to check me before I entered and everything. So I think that I want to believe that a lot of the properly regulated spaces are going to enforce some of these things. And so it looks okay for me. We pray that we'll be able to enforce it so that we get some results from it.
Correct. These institutions, talk about the restaurants, the snack bars, they were operating on a takeout basis even before the restrictions were eased of a sort. Now they can allow people to sit in. What were your observations during that period? Were they enforcing the face mask, hand sanitizers, hand washing setups? What was it like?
Well, quite a few were, and where I live, for instance, there are quite a few popular takeaway spots and sit-in spots, and I realized that they had removed the sit-in component from there, where people would sit outside and sit at a reasonable distance. The Veronica buckets were there, they were sanitizing their hands. The difficulty, though, was with the persons who were going, because if you had 3 or 4 people showing up together, they would normally sit around the table by themselves, you know, and they will still be close, with the assumption that, well, they walked in together, so they can sit close, but there was supposed to be distance between them. So I would say that relatively compliance with the early stages of that order has been good from where I observed it from. I cannot use that as a general impression. However, I don't know what is going on in other places, but from what I saw, it was a decent level of compliance in that regard. So it will be interesting to see how the expanded version goes from there.
For now, the people get to sit in and eat. And we are told for kitchen staff, every 15 minutes, you're supposed to wash your hands and then with soap under running water. And then there's a disposable tissue paper, you have to throw it away every 15 minutes. How are we going to enforce this?
It's not about just enforcing. I think that under normal circumstances, these should be normal practice for any place that operates a restaurant or a kitchen. Unfortunately, because the sanitary inspectors and whatnot of the various assemblies that are supposed to police these things have not done their jobs for decades, nobody knows the state of kitchens that we eat in. The only ones that get inspected mostly are the big name restaurants. But a lot of people don't eat in those big name restaurants. So I've got a joint in my neighborhood, like I said. If you see the kind of cars parked there and the kind of place it is, you're like, hey, what are they doing here? But that is how people prefer. They like the food there. You know, it's not really the aesthetics of it. They want the taste. Okay, but like I was saying, back to the point, realistically, I don't have too much expectation of compliance in that degree, because then it means costs will be incurred. At the moment, most of these companies will already be struggling with revenue because people are just not buying as much as they used to. The numbers have dropped. Places where you normally see queues, you don't have queues anymore, just one or two people still trooping in. And psychologically, people have not yet reached the level where they feel that they want to go and line up and sit down in a restaurant. There is that motion for people to go through. That line hasn't been crossed yet. But with regards to washing your hands every 15 minutes and doing that, it's a culture that these restaurants will have to learn. Compliance of that will be difficult because if you do an impromptu check, have you washed your hands? When was the last time you washed your hands? Oh, 15 minutes ago. How do you know? You understand?
And they're supposed to be wearing masks, so
yes, but those ones they are still doing. Those ones they are doing it.
You're wearing a face mask. How do you check for the taste of the food?
Those ones they are doing it, but will we even check the quality of masks? You know, there are so many things in there that might not necessarily require enforcement from an external authority. It just requires the operations themselves to become suddenly responsible for the people that they are feeding. But like I said, because they have gotten away for years with being poor about that, it will be a difficult culture change, but it needs to happen. So, like I said, once again, it's in the mindset of people. People are not yet comfortable about going to these places. That is the only thing that will save.
But do you also see a difficulty in even the staff who work in these areas complying?
Well, I do. I mean, which I think for everything that we've tried to do, we've had difficulties. And it's not peculiar to Ghana. The human nature and all that. I mean, like Godfred said, some of the things are within the restaurant space. There are things that they are supposed to already be, they've been there, but people have not been observing them. I mean, because obviously supervision is often slow and all that. But my point is that I want to believe that at this critical moment, that we all know what we face. If you're a restaurant supervisor or a hotel supervisor, I don't think you want to take risk. So I think that we just can rely on the conscience of people to be responsible at this point. While I still think that occasionally you have the officials of the Ghana Tourism Authority, the task force, going around to do some random checks. I think that can only be our best bet. I mean, we can't get 100%, but we only hope that people will just take responsibility and do what is right.
Let me go through what the ministry expects of those who organize conferences, awards, workshops, and wedding ceremonies, what they are supposed to do. 1. So display a no mask, no entry signage and ensure that all patrons are wearing masks on entry. Event organizers may supply face masks as souvenirs at entrances in case any person arrives without a face mask. Enough Veronica buckets together with tissues and standalone sanitizer dispensers must be positioned strategically at venue entrances in a manner as to prevent queuing and crowding. People in a queue must stand at least a meter apart. Strictly washing of hands before entering event venues. Ushers, upon application of hand sanitizers at entrances, shall escort guests to their seats, observing social distancing of not less than 1 meter and maximum of 50% of carrying capacity or 100 people per event. So upon entry into any hall for an event, these are the things that ministry expects people to do. If you're having a wedding, once you get to the venue, you're supposed to wash your hands. Somebody has to escort you and all that, and the 100 people per event.
It's a good thing, and I'm happy with the events side of things, although it's not going to be all kinds of events. But I have a feeling we are focusing on conferencing and the like as events, not your music concert or your whatever kind of situation. These kinds of events already have shown a high level of professionalism when it comes to their approach to dealing with things. And there is ample confidence that they will be able to execute some of these things, because even the venues for these events are places where you have to go through a certain kind of protocol to access. I'm talking about the big hotels. Now, the reason why it's also important that we get to this level is, look, the events part of our economy is underrated, but it is a crucial part of our economy. If you look at the size of our economy, for instance, look, 51%, that's the last time I checked, was it 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, we had the services sector contributing about 51% of our GDP. So if you have that sector lying fallow, doing nothing, the economy will struggle. So any kind of stimulation you can give that sector, albeit at a very small level, to get it moving, to get people, see, because for an event for 20 people, there's the person who cleaned the place, work. The person who's the catering service, work. Transportation, work. Entertainment. Work. The MC. The MC. The Galamsey.
Very important.
The Galamsey level.
Very important.
The Galamsey levels have dwindled.
Decoration.
You see, decor, rentals. Look,
it's huge.
It collapsed a lot in the sector, and the coming back of this is very crucial, because you see, most of these are small businesses. They don't employ 100, 200 people. They employ 10, 15 people. But they earn a living, regular living from this, and it keeps the economy rolling. So it's important that we have created an avenue where we can, on a small level, kickstart that sector of the economy to give us a certain level of productivity. I am really excited. I am confident, as compared to the food operators, that they will be able to operate with a certain level of compliance, and move things forward.
I think you're just looking at the conferences. How about a wedding, a funeral?
Well, again, it's the same for weddings. These days, we do a lot of weddings at event centers. If you don't comply, you get closed. Okay, so again, there is more than enough room to make sure that these things are done properly. Now, if you want to do the wedding in a church, the churches have different rules and regulations per what was released by the Minister for Religious Affairs. Most churches have said, don't even show your face there in the first place. Okay, so you're going to meet a different set of guidelines there that will affect you. But for those who want to do these things as event centers and whatnot, again, like I said, I am confident and I am particularly excited that they are kickstarting that part of the economy. The next stage for me is domestic tourism that we need to get moving. But this, for me, is a good sign.
There are some activities in there. Eva, let me run through them before you come in. So the first ones were what you see upon entry to the place. So the activities to critically observe social distancing. Tables usually designed for 10 chairs shall be reduced to 50% of the current seating capacity, like 5 chairs. And MC shall be required to initiate activities, demonstrations that touch on curtailing the spread of COVID-19. As much as possible, PA facilities shall be required to provide at least 2 microphones and carefully sanitized after each use. The use of hand sanitizers at the table should be encouraged. Observing 1 meter distance between guests and at least 1 meter interval in between tables is recommended. And so accredited individuals shall manage events only. So Godfred, I think this is where your point comes in. If you are not accredited with the Ghana Tourism Authority, you are now allowed to operate within this.
And they are saying they've created avenues where you can go and register. They will come and inspect before that happens. So yeah, like I said, I'm excited.
But one thing in here, they said all events shall be time constrained so as not to keep guests for too long. Unlike the churches, we know it's 1 hour. So how are we going to determine whether an event is being overstretched since there's no time frame for them?
I think this one has been left open. It's been left open because once they said all events shall be time constrained so as not to keep guests for too long. I asked a similar question. It means that it's been left to your own discretion or judgment to know that the times we are in, you need not to keep people for too long, because of course maybe it's a bit tricky, because I don't know how you're able to time a church service and say 1 hour, but then let's say for a wedding or for a conference you're not able to time it. Also, I think it's a bit tricky in this sense. This will be difficult to do. I mean, what time are you going to give to somebody for, let's say, a conference or a workshop? I mean, you just tell them that, okay, make sure you don't stay for long. But also, for me, what my problem with this thing is that I'm also happy with the events sector being allowed to operate, because I remember there's an association called Event Vendors Association of Ghana, EVAG. They met the president, actually, this was about 2-3 weeks ago, to talk about the challenges in the sector and what they were facing because of the restrictions. So this definitely comes to them as good news, because I remember some of them said that the association said its members were really struggling because they had even pre-planned events where they had pre-financed, and sometimes the clients had even paid, and then the events were cancelled. They couldn't hold them. In fact, they even had instances where clients were chasing them for the money for the events that they have bought things for already, and it was really a difficult situation. So it's good that they are coming back, albeit gradually. But then there are two parts. We are talking about professional event organizers, but there are event organizers who are also not professionals. I mean, somebody is having his or her own engagement, or maybe a small ceremony in their own home or in a community. They may not necessarily rely on most of the times. We don't look at the unregulated space, and event organizers is professionals. It's not something many Ghanaians are learning to be used to. And I didn't even know that they had to go through attaining some licenses and all that. But I can tell you, a lot of them may even be operating professionally, but they don't even have licenses. You see, and so all these things, if they have been working already, it wouldn't now take you at this moment now to tell people that they have to go for license. It means that all this while they have been operating, where were we? Didn't we know that they needed to have licenses? So like we always say, this COVID has exposed us in so many ways to fix a lot of things. So maybe this is one of the spaces we'll try and fix well, so that regulation becomes much easier.
But then the question becomes, how do you check those who are not duly licensed by the Ghana Tourism Authority? Because they are saying there should be a designated health and safety liaison person amongst the organizers. If I'm just a one-man event planner and you come to me, I'm doing deco, I have my own people, I am not going to get a safety personnel because nobody is checking.
Depends on what kind of events we are talking about. It's not all events that are open. You understand?
Okay.
Nobody's holding a conference in their home, last I checked. You need a certain kind of space for a certain kind of event. It is what it is. Okay, weddings will require decor. You will have to play music. If you are playing the music and they come and ask, these are people that are going around, why are you playing the music? Who came to check? Oh, I'm in the neighbor. Of course they know you have a problem. Okay, so I don't want to look at it too negatively in the sense that, oh, the one man showed this one. No, I think the kind of events we are looking at are in the space that can be handled correctly.
But you can have wedding ceremonies and you can have traditional weddings. That is hosted mostly in the homes. So who is checking that there's social distancing, that the people are 200?
Or you do it quietly.
So that will attract the authorities to come and check.
That's the point I keep making to you. Today I was asking Bernard something in the morning. If our local authorities were as efficient on certain things as they are on finding out when you are building a house. When you are building a house, you don't announce it.
Yeah. But there
is no way you can put a hole in the ground in this country in an area without the local assembly finding out. Give them 10 days.
Stop work, remove.
Just give them 10
immediately.
days. You understand? That is the kind of efficiency we expect they bring to this. But once again, I just feel that we are stretching this out a bit. For the categories that we are looking at, there will be a significant level of compliance. for those in the church space or in traditional ways. And really, unless you're saying we're going to have a lot of engagements suddenly and we won't have the weddings, that is not Ghanaians. Mosques are full. These are people who are waiting for the country to open so they can do their normal funeral. People are willing to wait. You understand? That is our cultural mindset. We are not suddenly going to start wanting small engagements and whatnots. Those who want what they want will get what they want. So, for me, I look at this, and on the regulation about time constraint, I look at it in the sense of they're asking for a lot more common sense application in terms of programming. And let's be honest, Abna, when you attend our programs, chairman will speak, deputy chairman will speak, some guest of honor will speak.
Yes.
There's a lot of unnecessary speeches at our events in particular. Instead of just going straight to the point, if you take out the speeches that just deal with giving the stage to folks, to prominent people, the event actually might just be an hour.
It's true.
But the speeches are the problem, because everybody who shows up and considers him or herself a VIP wants to be seen, wants to be heard. We have to do some special announcement or something. Remove all those elements from your event. Hello, good morning. Welcome to the COVID special seminar. Eben, talk. Abena, talk. Godfrey, talk. Thank you very much. We leave. Is that not an event?
Okay, I get you. But say your resource persons are Eben and myself, and you've invited the health minister as a special guest. He would have to speak.
The health minister knows about the regulations.
And so that would suffice?
It should suffice. You see, that's the point. It should suffice.
But can we trust people to go that level, that commonsensical level, to make it work for all of us?
The announcement the president made, if you look at it and analyze it completely in breakdown, it was 80% decide for yourself what you want to do. The churches have shown the way. The mosques have shown the way. Today, Tamale Mosque, what did they say? We know the people who enter this place. The fact that they say we should open, that's not we are going to open. When the crowds come, we can't control, so we won't open.
We will not open.
Some of the churches, they know their people. You think that they can't put in place measures? They'll put in place measures, but they feel that they simply cannot control the situation. So stay home. Is that not citizens being responsible? So there's a lot of responsibility that has been put in our hands. We just have to exercise it and exercise it wisely.
The drinking bars and nightclubs are to remain closed. But then the question arises, if I go to a restaurant or a hotel or any other restaurant, I can still purchase some drinks and have. Isn't that a safe?
I think that I don't know what the idea is, but I think what we
for the nightclubs is understandable.
It's understandable, but what we call even the drinking bars, most of them are not as regulated as a drinking bar in the midst of a hotel. That's the point.
That's true.
So the normal thing we call drinking bars in Ghana are not regulated. Let's be frank. And they are many.
The neighborhood
joints. I always tell you that the unregulated joints are more than the regulated.
So don't open.
And so don't open. You risk that. So I'm thinking that's the idea. I think that's the idea.
Yeah, and it works.
It makes sense. So we'll have to wait a while and see.
And see what they have.
Yeah.
Okay. I made mention of the tourist sites earlier, and Eben believes they should still be shut. Godfrey, do you toe the same line?
You see, these things are happening in phases. I think I can see where the ministry is trying to go with this. You see, a lot of the World Travel and Tour Council have issued a guideline for how countries that want to get back into tourism should operate. The first phase of it is to encourage and open up what they are calling domestic staycation. So, for instance, Abna and somebody wants to go somewhere, or Eben or Godfrey and somebody wants to go somewhere at this point. Normally we wouldn't, but now it's allowed. So the borders are shut, nobody's traveling, whatever. So let's try and get those persons moving. And there used to be a lot of those before COVID came. There were persons who go to Sogakopa, who go to Adan, who go to Kokrobite, who go to Eben's hometown. Some people were surfing in Axim and doing all kinds of things. That is domestic tourism. And the plan is to start from there. So once you get a bit of revival from there, the next phase is then to a country's nearest neighbor. So we also have a lot of people who leave Ghana to go to the beach in Togo.
Yeah.
Because they like the beaches in Togo. We have a lot of people who go to Cote d'Ivoire for the weekend and back. There are a lot of Ivorians who come in. A lot of Ghanaians go to Nigeria. So you move from that level to just your next door neighbors, not outside of the borders, but just to your next door neighbors. And then finally you open across continents. That is where you open the borders fully and flights are coming in. Your 9,000 people coming through the T3 and what. So I can see the plan that the tourism ministry has in terms of the layered approach to this by encouraging people. You see, because it's confidence building.
Okay.
It's important. So you've announced it. Somebody would say, okay, now I can do this. So let's go and check it out. We go, it's fine. Oh, Eben, last week I went to this place. It was cool. Yeah. Eben says, oh, so that's safe. Okay. Eben goes with whoever he wants to go with. Eben comes back and says, Chalakuto, last time it was cool. So Godfred goes with whoever he wants to go with. That is the process. It makes sense for me if the places we are going domestically are also observing the protocols. It's a good way to start. I am already in the phase of living the new normal.
You are in the new normal.
Yes.
So you might want to go to Afaja too during the weekend and check it out. Even does this suffice for you?
Yeah, I think he makes a good point. I mean, like my point, a lot of it was based on the tourism that comes from outside. I mean, so like you said, we can start gradually because the beaches are still not open, right?
Yeah.
So we can start, like you said, gradually opening the beaches. You see how it plays out locally. Then you begin to ease it gradually to your neighbors around before you even open, boom. But I also think that even when things open in the next, let's say, 4 or 5 months, when things are calm, you won't still get as much from tourism because not many people will still want to be moving. And also tourism is linked to people's economics.
Yeah.
And you know, at this time, generally the world itself is struggling. Jobs have been lost. It's not really time for people to want to really spend so much, but also the period has caused a lot of stress for people emotionally, mentally. So there are people who also want to relieve that stress by traveling to some places for that tourism exposure. So whichever way, it's a two-way affair. So I think that if we get to the point where we think things are getting safer, we want to start gradually, locally, before we zoom into other places. Why not?
Quickly before we move away, we've seen guidelines from the Education Ministry, the Sports Ministry, the Religious and Chieftaincy Affairs Ministry, and the Tourism Ministry. Which of these look more feasible and such that implementation would be okay? Godfrey?
I think the tourism one sounds feasible. The religious one was simply a warning that says don't open. And a lot, because they told you can open to satisfy you, but a 10-page guideline to opening, a lot of churches felt they couldn't because, let's be honest, you need money to keep those facilities open. Electricity bill is not free because you're a church. Water bill is not free because you're a church. Hygiene and stuff, all these things cost money. So a lot of churches and mosques have decided to stay away from that for now. So there's also that. And then there's the one in the sports sector. I think that is the more feasible one. The one to do with non-contact sports. So tennis, ping pong, drafts, all those ones are easily manageable. So these two, the sports and tourism for me are the ones that work.
What makes the Education Ministry's guideline not feasible?
The trust factor in there is larger. Let me say the distrust factor in there is larger than across any of the other sectors because it involves familial feelings from a parent to a child. And as you know, there are local proverbs and all. Nobody is giving two of. Some people are not giving two of children. They have just one. Yeah. Nobody's going to experiment based on a government of Ghana say so. And this is not just an MPP thing. We all know people simply do not trust our governments to be efficient with certain things.
It's true.
And there are a lot of parents who are not going to believe that overnight the Ministry of Education, CHAS and Co. have suddenly become the greatest enforcers of regulations in this country, a lot of parents are not going to buy into it. So we are going to see, from where I sit, I'm going to predict and say we are going to see a significant drop in attendance.
Okay, for the final years?
When the schools reopen.
Okay.
It might take time, but there's going to be a significant drop in attendance simply because, you see, people seem to think that, oh, parents are so tired that they want to drive their kids out of their house. No, not under these circumstances. If I had a child at this level, I can sit here and confidently tell you, no way my child is going to school. Fail the child, let him repeat.
Yeah.
I don't care. He will be alive, or she will be alive.
It's true.
To repeat next year, as compared to me organizing a funeral next year. You understand? So the education one, because of the huge distrust factor in there, I'm not really buying into it now.
Okay, so sports, tourism, religion, and then education in that order for Godfred Eben.
Well, I think it's the same. It's the same. It's the same for me. The sports looks okay because we are looking at non-contact sports and the likes, and so the sports is fine. The tourism is feasible. It's not as tedious. Indeed, the education is very tricky. I mean, I am the only confidence I have in what I think they can do and do perfectly well is perhaps social distancing in the classrooms, and that is because you have the other classrooms for first years and second years being there for you.
Space.
So there will be a lot of space. But apart from that, there's a bigger conversation about whether we are going to do testing or not. No kind of testing for those who are coming. It's a bit tricky. It's a bit tricky. I think that one is difficult. I think it's difficult. I don't know how they are going to do it. Yesterday, a teacher was telling me there's a school where the Form 3s alone, they are over 400. And the space they have is so small, even for the second and third year, first and second years. They don't know how they are going to manage it. So I was like, well, let's see. Maybe your head teacher surely is aware. They will have to deal with the GES within the locality, and they see how they are going to deal with it. Yesterday, when you listen to the GES boss on Point of View, he wasn't convincing. He wasn't convincing. There were very critical questions that were coming, and the answers were not convincing. So it tells you that it's going to be difficult. So let's see. We know they are going to do it in about 2 weeks, a week or two from now. Maybe from now till that time, something is going to be done. But like Godfred said, some parents would definitely take a decision to let their children stay home. And I don't think there's any law barring a parent from doing that.
Not at all.
I don't think so.
Not at all. And the religion one, you also think?
As for the church, no. I mean, you know my position on the church. I have said it from day one that the president gave the churches a puzzle. And
to go and solve.
And it's a puzzle that you can never unravel completely.
For now.
So I knew, and I told you the last time that in the couple of days after the announcement, we are going to see circulars from churches saying that we are not opening. And indeed, it is happening. I think it's a huge risk nobody wants to take.
I have seen some churches with Google Forms. So you go on there, you tell them whether you'll be able to join either the first, second, or third session.
Oh, no, because
whether you're coming with your family
a complete
and all that. It will be interesting to see how that plays out.
But you know what I said? There will be a complete negligence of the opportunity to attend church. Okay, but the initiative from the churches themselves, and a lot of them, to inform their members that, look, calm down. We know you are in a hurry to come to us and to do our thing.
We miss you too.
But until we understand this best, because you know the worst thing that can happen is for you to open up. Somebody gets ill, just one person, and you have to attend the funeral service in that same church, and the pastor has to preach. Normally, you have to talk about how the person died.
Yeah.
How did the person die? Who was responsible for the person's death? How do you even come to terms with that? When you can simply say, if the person had stayed home, maybe in 3 or 4 months, that person would still have found the opportunity to come and worship with you.
That's true.
You understand? So, who should be the scapegoat for this? Who should be? That's the point. Nobody, and that's what I think the stance a lot of churches have taken, that their flock is too valuable for them to take those kind of chances with. And so until they are sure that those risks are minimized to the minimum, they are not going to go full with the puzzle that Eben says they have been given.
We will later go into the figures in Ghana. Now the recoveries, of course, the 3,000 mark. That's some very good news coming in. We'll look at that. But before then, let me take some of your messages which you sent to us. Okay, BB from North K says we are having problems in those COVID-19 fights because we are talking post-COVID in the middle of the worsening situation. We should focus on putting in all to contain it first. Otherwise, we'll be here for a very long time. You can't have it all. We should let the results lead. Okay, so you think we are not in post-COVID yet. Okay. Please, I overheard someone saying that the final years will be allowed to send phones to school. I want to ask if that one has been approved. And I also want to know if when school reopens, will government provide students with health services to check on them from time to time? That from Sarah in Aniem. Sarah, the mobile phones, it was a proposal from the Parents and Teachers Association because there'll be no visiting, especially for the senior high school students, but that has not been confirmed yet. Another one from Geoffrey in Tadi. Abna, how long will it take the STMA, I think you're referring to the Secondary Takrade Metropolitan Assembly, to share truck colors to market women? It's been more than a week now and there's no end in sight. What they feared, the spread of the virus, is going to happen because every street open space have been taken over by these women, some hawking from house to house, most of them with their nose mask turned into chin mask. I fear for a spike. Already the metropolis is a hot spot. That's some worrying developments.
The markets are open today.
Yes, but he says the rest, those who are not allowed to trade for a particular day, they've taken to other streets.
So
they're doing their own thing.
Enforce, but we'll check this again.
Yeah, we would have to check that. Akins from Kumasi, good afternoon. One of the guidelines for reopening of schools states that schools will be unavailable for religious activities. Does that imply that all churches that have their services in classrooms in both private and public schools cannot engage in church services?
Of course.
If so, the media needs to stress on this so a good number of people do not know about this.
It's clear. That discussion was very clear.
If you don't have a church building, then
yeah.
Online service. Do they even have online services?
That's why Even said it's a puzzle. See, because in the religious regulations, you have been locked there. Then they take you to the school, and a lot of churches are school compounds.
It's true.
That's what you've been locked out. Don't go there. You see, so wherever it is you pass, hey, stay home.
Prince Henry from Koforidua, if all the day students become boarders, will all the day teachers also become boarders too? Because it's not all the teachers that are staying in teacher bungalows. Who is going to control the social distancing in various dormitories? And, okay, a moment. Who is going to control the social distancing in various dormitories and even bathing time when students bath together? Okay. The issue about the teachers who do not stay on campus.
Yeah, but I think the last time they answered, yeah, there will be provisions for that. You know, sometimes there's one thing I've noticed. Sometimes it's good to ask questions when things have been put to you, but sometimes the questions are best answered when the process starts. You know, and I think we shouldn't assume, we shouldn't think the people leading this are dumb. I mean, a lot of the questions we're asking, you'll be surprised. You know, and I thought that the education guidelines were very comprehensive. I mean, except for some concerns about whether there's going to be testing or not, which we know is an issue of cost. It's an issue of how fast we can even do it because our rapid test kits are not ready. So that's quite a difficult component. But apart from that, a lot of the things, I believe they will be solved. I mean, for instance, this question the person is asking about student bathing in the bathrooms. I mean, are you saying people can't even bath in bathrooms in badges? It's possible. And also, if you have other students not coming to school, it means that you have more spaces for people to do a lot of things. So I think that some of the things we can best answer. I mean, I'm waiting for the schools to reopen. Then we'll take our cameras around and see how things are being implemented. Because we
will not be allowed into the schools.
Yeah.
Oh, for media, I don't think so.
You know the challenge we have,
even
when we are checking
because you see,
school placement.
Yeah, but we'll have to go and check. We have a duty to monitor government's policies, and they cannot stop us.
We are not allowing parents, we also allow you.
No, but parents, I think that's a bit different, because if you are going there basically as a journalist, I mean, we've been working since all the lockdown, because we are also considered essential service. Yeah. We want to go and bring the news to Ghanaians. This is what's happening in the schools. This is what your children are going through, so that people have a certain level of
in some 2 weeks we are going to find out.
We'll find out.
I have a question from you. Kofi from Sapheman wants to know what the future for football in Ghana is looking like with the current situation.
Kofi wants... you don't have enough time for me for this. But it does not look like we are ready. At the ministers' conference, twice they asked a question.
The cost per game?
Not the cost per game. What is the blueprint going forward? And there was no comprehensive response to that, which for me was a bit disappointing. That we did not get a comprehensive blueprint on what even the proposal was on the way forward, considering we had been told by the people who manage football that they would give a decision on the status of the league by the 20th of this month. So what have they been doing for the past 3.5 months? We do know that they've been attending meetings, talking to people, but what exactly have they been telling them? What are the suggestions they've been putting forth? In what form? Because of course they've been saying things. That is why you will get a response that, oh, it will cost 60,000 per game.
Maybe that scared them off.
Well, that's something we knew from a month and a half ago. We didn't need the NSC to come and tell us that it will cost 60,000, and that a lot of football clubs in this country cannot afford it. Okay, now a lot of football fans are looking at it in the realms of, well, football has started in Europe, A, B, C, D, but the operational cost of the clubs in Europe, as compared to what we are doing here, the cost they are bearing just to make sure those footballers are on the pitch to play, and the commercial interest involved is not the same. Clubs are fighting for $400 million. It's not something you can let go. I am owed $25,000. I certainly can let the $25,000 go. I'm not going to risk footballers for $25,000. Somebody is not willing to let it go for $400 million. That's a lot of money. And for that, they need to sit down and have a consideration. Now, because of the value of what is at stake, there's also more than enough resources to create a safe environment where they are doing 2 tests a day, they are sanitizing footballs every 15 or so minutes, they are, when the players are training, if you've checked the videos, there's always a tap on, a sprinkler on at certain times of the day so that they can just pass through it and be disinfected. We train on in the sun. Which sprinkler is going to sprinkle the players here to watch them down? The structural deficiencies are just too many. So move forward a bit, plan better until you have in place a situation where clubs can afford the options you have put forth, and then you can play your football. But for now, I don't see anything of that sort. So football fans in Ghana, just wait.
Sorry to disappoint you, but the Premier League is coming, so
17th.
They can enjoy that.
Live here.
Let's now look at the global headlines and some figures quickly. Godfrey, if you take us through that, right, and then we'll look at Africa and the Ghana figures. Let's
go quickly around the world and talk of some interesting stories. Well, a host of European countries have now easing travel restrictions. Sweden has announced that it is easing travel restrictions. They can travel freely within the country from 13th June. Elsewhere in Europe, the Czech Republic will also drop restrictions on travel to and from Austria, Germany, and Hungary. That's happening tomorrow. Ireland's Prime Minister hopes to be able to recommend the resumption of air travel with some selected countries. Everybody's choosing who should come at the moment. They're calling their friends. Nobody's calling us yet. Now, Turkey says it plans to resume flights with around 40 countries in June, which is crucial because for us in this side, the Turkish airline is very important. So that is also looking good. Now, Spain says to reopen land borders with France and Portugal from the 22nd of June. Now, there's a virtual vaccine seminar happening today globally. Everybody who is in there trying to raise some money. One person nobody thought would show up virtually was the US president, but he did.
He needs
about 43 minutes ago, he made an unexpected appearance and he's made a couple of statements, and that's what now also happening. Interestingly, in France, they've come up with an interesting invention to maintain the social distance. So a museum has invented a 3-meter hat that you can buy. It's artistic, but you know, it just shows you the 3 meters delineation, so nobody can come close to you, which is quite interesting. A lot of people are wearing it. You can go online and check it out. It comes in all forms of designs. People are enjoying it. Now, Iran, like we said, currently on the second wave, and it's a brutal second wave, and it is what we are all praying against with our situation, because we've seen a lot of countries with the second surge. Okay, and this Iran second surge, at the moment they're reporting 3,000 cases a day. Deaths are quite high, but they are saying they're not locking down. As for that one, it's not going to happen. There's just too much. There's just too much at stake. 133 more deaths recorded in the UK today, and their parliamentary union is up in arms against the reopening of parliament. It says they are saying that they will put their workers at risk, so parliament should reconsider its opening. So these are some of the stories globally that are making headlines. Who are our friends? They should open their borders to us. I mean, Ghana. Well, we haven't opened them. Maybe when we start at that level, we can begin with them. So. But I think what has happened is a lot of countries are doing what they call channel visitation. So Germany is on very good terms with Austria. So they find a way where they do reciprocal terms. So okay, I'll quarantine your people for 14 days, to quarantine mine for 14 days. We can do A, B, C, D, and then we share costs. Share the costs. And between the two countries, they agree. That so perhaps we could try this with a country that doesn't have too big a problem, like Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire doesn't seem to have too much of a significant problem. Around our numbers. So we can talk to Cote d'Ivoire and say, can we try opening our borders just for your people and see for a week? Who knows? But Charlie, the last time the imported cases, so we don't need that yet. We should wait. Even. Okay, so some of I think the global figure is now around 6.6 million. That's the cases over, and the death is around 380,000 and over, and recovered over 3.1 million recovered. Within Africa, according to the African Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the cases 163,599, the deaths 4,611, and the recoveries 70,894. Some of the African stories making rounds. The AU is worried. The AU says it is aiming at 10 million coronavirus tests for Africa. And so the African Union has started an ambitious initiative to increase testing for COVID-19 across the continent. The aim is to take the total number of tests down up to 10 million over the next 3 months. To date, more than 160,000 cases have been confirmed in Africa, with 4,600 deaths. But you know, Africa's test the whole of the continent of 1.3 billion people. We have tested 2.4 million tests. This for the whole of Africa so far, and it's quite low. And the WHO has expressed similar concern that they fear that the low numbers of testing could be our undoing. I think they're supposed to launch a project on testing later today for the African countries. So the AU is working around that, and then there are also a few stories. Mandatory testing for Liberia curfew breakers. Those who break the curfew will go under that mandatory testing process. And then also new bus rules in Uganda leave many stranded. Hundreds of people in Uganda's capital, Kampala, were left stranded on the first day of the resumption of public transport since coronavirus restrictions were lifted. So those are some of the few headlines. But what is happening in Ghana? Godfred, are you there? On the Ghana figures. Well, if you look at the Ghana figures as at the 1st of June, the total number of cases stand at 8,548, 38 dead, 2 are in critical condition, and 13 severe cases. Now, UGMC has 4, Gais 3, Kolebu 2, Kumasi 3, 37 2, Ho 1. So that seems to be our current situation. But I'm still going to end on the note of what's the preparation for a surge? You know, so because of the way things are going, your next phase is preparation for things like that. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. But Godfred, I noticed, why is it that for most of the countries it appears when you put a case count, it's like we don't
subtract the recoveries and the death, because if you
to know the active cases.
Yes, no, our active cases is 5,378.
But
my point is that this includes. Does this include the recovery?
No,
it does not.
So my point is that if you check out the people who have recovered, then our case is around 2,246.
No. It's 5,000.
Why is it
Because we are over 8,000.
Okay.
So minus the recoveries
minus the
and the deaths.
3,132 and the deaths.
Then we still have 5,378 active cases.
So that's what the active cases mean. You take away the recoveries and the deaths. A couple of the messages just before we wrap up finally. Mauli from Tema. Good job, team. Kindly educate people, especially non-medical practitioners, on the use of hand gloves. We receive money and other items from tellers from different institutions, especially bank tellers. They basically put us at risk while claiming they are protecting themselves, and they are not. So the use of the gloves. Some say it gives people a false sense of protection, because then you might think you're wearing the gloves so you can do everything you want and you end up infecting yourself. Edem from Denu, with regards to senior high schools, will the bathrooms be disinfected after every turn of bathing? What of the toilets? What of dorms, door handles? Will they be disinfected daily? I'm just afraid for these little ones. Will the teachers mark students' exercise books? For me, we are risking the lives of our children.
We know the answers when they start.
But for the washrooms, everybody who attended the boarding school knows that students wash their own bathrooms.
Yeah.
No school employs cleaners
to do that.
To do that.
Well, so that's it. That's our show for today. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Abnanya Mechampedu. I was here with Ebenezer Afenyedatsi. He's the head of a City Business News Desk, and also Godfred Akuto-Buafo, the head of the Current Affairs Desk. It was live on Citi FM and Citi TV. And Citi TV is 2 years today, guys.
Happy birthday.
It's been amazing.
It's been amazing. And
Thank you for
we'll
watching.
be here for eons more.
Thank you so much. Do enjoy the rest of your day.